If you look at all the top profiles across every region, all players are gaining thousands of LP playing Kalista Flex, and yet the data makes it look like it's a B tier comp. Why is it an S tier then? Well, in this video, we're going to dive into a top Chinese player 62nd who dominates every single set, and once again is pushing rank 1 by maining Kalista Flex. There are three main reasons why I think Kalista is really good in the current meta. The first is that it's the most versatile 80 flex comp in the game, and that's really huge because there's a lot of other compositions that makes you feel like you have to hit a specific carry or else you lose. With Kalista Flex, you just have to play Kalista plus a fairy and 3 multi-strikers, and you can pretty much build whatever else you want. The second is that it actually can beat a lot of the reroll comps, which is really big. I think a lot of people hate losing the reroll. Kalista might be one of the reasons to play. If you're tired of losing to a lot of reroll, I think Kalista can actually win out and outscale a lot of the reroll comps. And then 3, perhaps one of the most important reasons, is that I think mastering this comp will improve your TFT game. There's a lot of skills that it teaches you in order to have success and consistency. Here's some considerations, though, of maybe when you shouldn't be playing it. One is that you generally need a lot of resources. If you're just playing like on a silver portal and you get 3 champions and you're not making a lot of econ, you're generally going to struggle unless you're high rolling. The second reason is that it's really easy to actually bot 4 or even bot 2 if you misplay. The stats on Kalista are actually very bad right now. It's like a 4.7 at Challenger. And that's because it's really, really easy to make mistakes. And the third is that sometimes rerollers end up taking your carries, which can be really annoying. A lot of multi-strikers and warrior players, for example, play Kalista as their 4 cost to cap out their board. So if you do see someone trying to angle Kalista and you see a multi-striker / warrior reroller, then maybe reconsider playing it. There are 2 approaches of how to play Kalista. The first is through win streak. If you're playing win streak, try to prioritize around your paired unit upgrades and specifically look for a Rageblade carry. The Rageblade carry could be a bunch of different units. Basically, a lot of different carries can utilize it. The easiest to hit are 1 cost, and so a few examples here are Jace, Ashe, and Twitch. You could also carry Namzi. If you hit, Tristana 2, Kog'Maw 2, you can also put them as your Rageblade carries, but here's just a few examples. And then build out their origin, which usually gives you your front line. So Portal is good for Jace. Eldritch and Multi-Strikers is good for Ashe, not just Eldritch, actually. And Twitch is playing around Frost. From there, you should be able to win streak on stage 2 if you have a bunch of upgrades and push your tempo. On stage 3, if you have a few pairs, you could roll on 6 for upgrades, but don't try to roll too much unless you're very, very desperate. Because if you roll too much on level 6 at stage 3, you're not going to have that much gold for level 8. If you are very, very rich, let's say you are playing Gold Opener or Gold Subscription, Scuttle Puddle, Crab Brave, things like that, you actually do have a little bit more flexibility of rolling. And then stage 4 onwards, level to 8 at 4-2, and you enter the roll down matrix, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The other game plan to think about is lose streak, where you try to secure a 5 loss for maximum econ. You usually play this if you have a really strong lose streak augment like Fortune or What Doesn't Kill You. Hold units that are core to the comp, so such as an Akali, a Jax, a Zillion, because these are ways to activate core synergies later on. And it's not that important to get them 2-star, but you want to hold on to them because rolling for them at 8 can be really tricky. And then you focus fire and kill off 1 and 2 units per fight. This adds up over time. If you kill, let's say, 2 units a fight, then you preserve 10 HP per stage, and that is 20 extra life going to stage 4, which is massive. Although, pragmatically speaking, you're probably going to kill between 0 and 1 when you play lose streak. But even if you do that, you still preserve maybe up to 1 entire full life in the late game. Stage 3, just keep losing until carousel and pick your correct items. And then you level up to 7 at 3-5 and potentially roll a little bit to stabilize. And then from there, either go to level 8 at 4-1, 4-2 and enter the roll down matrix. There's many ways you can get to a Kalista board, but here's one of the most standard ways that you might get there. The first is just to use a simple multi-striker item holder for a multi-striker carry. So Ashe 2 holds Rageblade and Last Whisper. Jace ends up being a shapeshifter, and you play into Portal very early on. And then you just have him be the item holder for Fiora. So at level 4, you play multi-strikers. At level 5, you insert a portal. At level 6, maybe you take in a Chrono with the Jax or maybe another shapeshifter. At level 7, here's the example shapeshifter. It's Nico because she is a witchcraft that ties to Fiora. And then level 8, you transition with Akali, Nasus, Rakan. And this is generally going to be like a lot of the units that you roll for because it's very hard to hit the 5 cost. But if you do hit a 5 cost, you oftentimes play it. Like a 1-star Camille is way better than a Jax 2, and a 1-star Briar is way better than like a Nico. But that all kind of depends on your situation, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Now, here's where it gets a little bit tricky. The number one thing that you want to focus on for your skill improvement is forward thinking. From levels 5 to 7, always be thinking about what is your next in when you level. Next in meaning what unit are you playing next? And a lot of times you're just going to be thinking about a way to activate a trait for your carry. So if you're playing around Jace, for example, as your item holder, are you able to get 3 Portal or another Shapeshifter in? If you're playing around Ashe, can you find a way to level for a multi-striker or for an Eldritch? For Twitch, when you level to 5, can you activate Frost and Hunter if you haven't already? And that's just like one of many examples. If you're already maxed on traits for your carry, or there's no way for you to do that, think about activating a trait for your front line. Let's say, for example, you're playing around Twitch carry and you have Frost Hunter and you're thinking about a level 5 unit. You're playing around Warwick, you might as well activate around Vanguard as to help your front line. And that's a lot better than, let's say you have Zillion to activate Frost, but you're going to activate the Preserver with a Bard. Bard is part of your backline, and you don't really need that. You want to activate more frontline tank DPS. If there's no way to do either 1-2, then just look for a quality unit. A quality unit could just be like you hit an early Nasus, even if you don't have Shapeshifter, he's just a good unit. You hit an early Fiora, you have no Witchcraft and you have no Warrior, that's fine, just play it because it's just a good unit. So you can always just level and play like a high quality unit if you want to. The other half of forward thinking is considering your item carrier. A lot of times people are so willing to sell like their upgraded units and play a 1-star version of their forecast. And they always think step A and step B. Like, oh, step A is my carry. I sell it. I hit 1 Kalista, I hit 1 Fiora. I sell it. I itemize both. But if you're playing 1-star Kalista, 1-star Fiora, 1-star Rakan, 1-star Nasus, how are you going to kill Lilia 3, Poppy 3, Blitz 3, Nunu 3? You're just not going to be able to get enough DPS on the board because you're playing a 1-star versus their 3-star. And so a way to alleviate that process and also smooth out variance is to think about a 1-2-3 step process instead of a 1-2. So for example, in stage 2, let's say you're playing around that Jace early that's holding a bunch of these items. You can transfer some of these items to Shyvana while you move off the Rage Blade to somebody else, or keep it on her, and then eventually move it to Fiora. If you play an Ashe, you can actually take 1 step between her and Kalista and play around an itemized Hecarim. If you're playing Twitch, you can actually itemize a Jinx 2 instead of a Kalista 2. And these are all units that you can hit on stage 3 and stage 4 potentially on your roll down. Because what ends up happening a lot of times in the stage 3 and stage 4 roll downs is you think you're rolling down just for the 4 cost, but these 2 and 3 costs are the actual secret of how you can stabilize your board, so that way you buy time before you get to your 4 costs. I actually want to show you guys what Kalista stats look like right now, which I told you looks really, really bad, but the difference between getting stuck on level 8 and level 9 is a huge deal. I brought this up in my tier list video, but just to reiterate, you hit multiple 5 costs and you're averaging a 5.5 on level 8. That is terrible. Usually just putting in the 5 costs raises your average placement a lot because of the high value nature of it. And so if you get stuck on 8, you are going to bot 4 more often than not. But if you get to 9, it unlocks so much more power because you can play more traits, more powerful units, and you're much more likely to hit your 4 costs. And so the most important thing is to find a way to not get stuck at level 8 and try to find a way to get to 9. And so when you're rolling down at level 8, think in packages and not individual units. A lot of times you're going to roll down and you're probably going to hit one of these 4 costs. If you hit Fiora 2, but you don't have anything like Kalista or the multi-striker package at all, just play around the Preserver and the Warrior package with like Sugarcraft. If you hit Kalista, but Fiora is nowhere to be found, you could item hold on Hecarim like we talked about and have this be your stable level 8 to push to 9. Sometimes these other units and traits that all go well with each other can also be played as a backup. Let's say Olaf is really uncontested and you hit an uncontested Olaf 2. Just play Olaf 2. Give him the Fiora items. And then just tech in the Frost. Jinx is a hunter that links with Olaf, and then you can push to 9 and then eventually find Kalista 2 and transfer the items from Jinx to Kalista. Little bonus is that Diana is a good unit to keep at 9, and she's a Bastion that ties in with Hecarim to help you get that multi-striker. Varus is oftentimes uncontested as well, so maybe you hit Varus 2, give him the Kalista items with Rage Blade Last Whisper plus 1 extra item, and then have a little Pyro Shapeshifter set up to help you push to level 9. Maybe you hit a Briar, and that's the way that you link back into the composition, because then you sell Varus and you sell Nico, play Briar Kalista, and congrats, you're back in the tree. So tap into that Galaxy Brain and open your mind to the possibilities of your roll down, because chances are if you're only rolling for the exact units that are described in those comp sheets, you're probably going to go bot 4 and get stuck at 8. The augment priority for this composition is on stage 2, you generally want econ, but you can also take items. For your second, you usually want items or combat. And then the last is you want combat, and then if not, just take some items. Some examples at silver, item collector just gives you really good stats, but this is something you pick up at like the end of the game. You definitely don't want it on stage 2. AFK is early econ, and that's like a perfect example of a really good silver for this composition. Band of Thieves is also something that you can always generically take because it helps you just itemize like a lot of your 4 and 5 costs. So if you hit like, you know, a Briar or a Camille, like you just don't have items for them, just put a Thieves Scales on it, it's perfectly fine. Over Encumbered is also a really good 2-1 to give you a lot of extra items to make sure that you can be ready to spike once you hit your 2 stars. The 2 best gold augments for this composition by far is Fortune Favors the Bold and Little Buddies. Fortune, we talked about Loot Street Cash Out and how this comp needs a ton of resources. This is pretty much everything that the comp actually wants. And Little Buddies ends up being really powerful and a nice way for you to actually keep in some of the cheap units like Jax and Akali for a while, so that way you can scale your 4 and 5 costs. You can take strong items that you know you're going to be playing on your champions later as well. Unleash the Beast, for example, just gives you a strong item and lets you play for win streak with tempo, and then you eventually put it onto Fiora. And Slam is just like a good econ setup for you, so that way you can get to fast 8 and eventually roll down for all of your 4 costs. For Prismatic is actually more aimed at combat. So a lot of the Prismatics that we're recommending are just things that help you make your board stronger. Support Golem is always good. Giant Mighty is always good. Immovable Object is always good. And so for that reason, Support Golem, Giant Mighty, Immovable Object are all kind of the same thing. In fact, if you look at our guides, these are generally never bad. So always like pick these as a default option while you're rolling for your other things. And then Lucky Gloves ends up being very good because you have so many 4 and 5 costs that you can itemize all of them. A lot of times you end up taking things like Lucky Gloves, especially if you can play for like 3 Lucky Gloves or more. The item builds that are just generally recommended are Rageblade, Last Whisper onto Kalista, and then the third item is your Fairy. But you can also go for like double Rageblade, or you can go for Red Buff to help get some anti-heal if you don't have it. And Gambler's Blade is like another alternative that I've seen a lot of people play on Kalista, which actually is pretty good because it generates you a ton of items. So early game, you can play like Rageblade and Gambler's Blade on Ashe, print a ton of gold and fast 8 that way. Fiora is really good with Bloodthirster, Stairs Gauge, and Infinity Edge. A lot of people play Titans on her, but if you get to pick her True Bis, I personally really like IE right now to help assassinate a lot of the backline and burst. But you can also play other things, another source of healing like Hand of Justice. Thieves Gloves is totally fine. This Giant Slayer is meant to go for Fiora, not for Nasus. Whoops. And then Nasus just takes all your defensive items. You can play Warmog, Redemption. Sunfire ends up being like a way for you to get easy anti-heal early, and you're playing for tempo. But you can also play like, you know, Bramble and Dragon's Claw and Stoneplate Gargoyle and a bunch of other different tank items. Just throw whatever you can on Nasus. And then late game, Briar ends up holding similar items to Fiora. I have seen people actually sell their Fiora to itemize a Briar too, and then like, you know, put whatever leftover items on another copy of Fiora. That's perfectly fine. But yeah, those are just some ways to cap out your board late game. And I just added this actually, but a lot of times you end up having Fiora items that are similar to Camille and Briar. Let's say you're in a situation where you hit Kalista 2 and you hit Briar 2 before you hit Fiora, or you hit Camille 2 somehow very easily. Just itemize them, and they hold very similar items to Fiora, except I think they also like Edge of Night, so maybe Edge of Night instead of IE here. But you can totally have this be like a versatile setup where you have Fiora and then you move the items to Briar or Camille late game. I want to dive into a couple of examples of how the top Chinese players are playing this to rank 1. We're hopping on board 62nd, who's in the middle of a Treasure Golem start, and he has Ashe 2 and Jace pair. So if we pause at 2-1 and look at his augments very briefly, he has a Bastion crown, which doesn't really work with the Kalista line, and generally just not very good. He has Shimmer Scale Essence, which is actually a really good augment, but the problem is he has an Ashe 2 and 1-star Syndra and 1-star Elise. The Mogul's Mill is not going to actually reliably print gold, and in 5 rounds, he's going to get a Gambler's Blade. If he got the Gambler's Blade immediately, I could see him try to play around that immediately, but the problem is he doesn't actually have a consistent way to proc the Moguls. And then Tiny but Deadly is combat, and we talked about how you don't want combat really until the late stage of the game. He rolls all 3 options and gets put in a situation where he has one of everything. He has Econ with Spoils of War 3, Caretaker's Chosen, which is an item, and this is Removable Object, which is basically combat, even though it gives you a Randuin's for an item. And so based off our opener, we really want economy because we need a ton of gold to hit our board. So I think it's going to be Spoils of War 3 here, even though it's not conventionally the best econ augment in the stats. Okay, so we go for that, and we end up hitting Ashe 2 and Jace 2, which is really big. In fact, maybe if he knew that this was going to happen, he probably would have picked Shimmer Scale Essence, but he didn't have Jace 2 at the time. And he ends up slamming this Rage Blade. Notice how he's positioning around Treasure Golem to activate, so that way it dies first and he can give his items to his other units. A little bit unfortunate because he actually positioned a way for the Syndra to take the item over the Ashe. If he wanted to be a little bit more consistent with it, he would put Ashe in the bottom center, so that way she would get the item before the Syndra. He ends up power leveling here because he's playing Spores of War, and Spores of War only gets you value if you are killing extra units. And so now he repositions kind of the way we're talking about, which is put the Ashe a little bit closer to the Golem that dies, so that way he can get the item. And now we get the Deathblade on Ashe, and now we should push our tempo, and this is a way for him to capitalize on the early game stage 2. Oh my god, on 2-3, he actually farms a component, so you can get a component in stage 2 with Spoils of War 3. That's insane. I didn't even realize that. Oh my gosh. Okay, he is last pick on Carousel, so he goes for a vest on a Mordekaiser, and it kind of fills in the traits that we talked about, which is to play around the Origin, and right now he's playing around Ashe, and oh my gosh, he levels to 6 for Mordekaiser to get in 5 Eldritch. That's how much he wants the 5 win streak here. He's going to slam a Bloodthirster on Jace. This is going to be our item holder for Fiora. I would actually recommend against leveling the 6 in these kinds of situations because I think if you lose, it's a really bad result. And he actually does lose here. So the level to 6, I think, is not worth it. And I think that this is really punishing. Because now, actually, if you look at it, he still has to play level 6 board, but he can't make 10 gold either unless he prints 1 gold from killing a unit and then also wins the fight. There's a little bit of variance as well with the Treasure Golem, what items you get, and he had to reposition according to make sure to get the items onto the Ashe. So I do understand where his head's at, and overall he still made 11 gold here, so not the end of the world. Okay, it looks like 62nd is winning pretty easily on 3-1 as well. Prints a duplicator, which is really nice. And I just want to take a quick look at his 3-2 augment. Taking a look at his augments here, Raining Gold is another econ augment, which you don't need 2 of because then you're going to be too weak. Once you hit your board, you're just going to have no combat strength. Explosive Growth for that same reason. It's just redundant to Spoils of War. You want something that helps you either itemize your carries, because right now he has 1 item Ashe, 1 item Jace, or just straight up combat that enhances his board of 6 units. So I'm down to hold Portable Forge and roll the other 2, or roll all 3. He rolls all 3, and he actually has 2 choices that are interesting. Stand United is something that can scale really well with the composition, because Kalista ends up playing a lot of 2-ofs, like 2 Witchcraft, 2 Chrono, 2 Shapeshifter, so on and so forth. So this ends up being something that's good in the late game. And Sleight of Hand is something that's beneficial right now, because he might be able to like itemize on a 2-star unit and get a lot of tempo. The only issue is that the 2 upgrades that he's playing around are Ashe and Jace, and they both have 1 item. So you end up putting Sleight of Hand Thief Gloves onto a 1-star unit, which can end up being pretty low value. If you had a Mordekaiser 2, for example, I probably would go for Sleight of Hand, but maybe we lean towards Stand United. I think Avenge the Fallen is also a combat augment that you would take if you have nothing else, but in general, I think this is just a little bit understated, and I don't think it's like a very consistent combat augment, but you could take it if you didn't have better options. Oh, one thing that's actually interesting is that in this portal in particular, Avenge the Fallen is better because you have a golem that you're sacrificing, so it actually activates quicker than usual. He ends up going around Stand United, and he sells his Jace to move his Bloodthirster to Jax because he wants to transition to the multi-strikers as opposed to stay on Jace and be stuck with having just like Shapeshifters and Eldritch. And we're fast forwarding to the end of stage 3 because he pretty much just keeps his board, levels to 7, and you can see how he just maintains his tempo. He's still just playing Ashe and he's playing Jax. Just very simple game plan. Not trying to rush and sell the Ashe 2 for Kalista. A lot of people just sell this Ashe and play it on Kalista the moment they find it, but he's really taking his time. He's so rich here at 4-1, and looks like he's going to level 8, so let's go ahead and slow things down here and try to watch this in real time. Notice how he's buying things like Olaf, and now he has Olaf paired with the Diana, so that is actually one way he can immediately link. Oh, he sells a Diana. Okay, that's a little bit controversial in my opinion, because I feel like he can just play that immediately over, say, the Eldritch. I think actually he might be considering the possibility of playing around Stand United, and because things like the Shapeshifter from Release and having the Mordekaiser might just be too many traits that he's playing for. Ends up slamming his Stairs Gauge, so he's getting ready for that transition. Fast forwarding again and taking a look at his 4-2 augment. 4-2 augment, he has Golden Egg, Radiant Relics, and Spellcaster's Toolbox. This is not the comp to use this, so I'd probably roll that. Radiant Relics is a little bit lower value than usual because you have the Treasure Golem, so it actually fills up your item count. You don't definitely need it as much. And like we talked about, you'd rather take combat at 4-2. And Golden Egg is kind of a meme. I think you take Golden Egg if you're trying to impress your viewers, or if you feel like you're so far ahead, there's no possible way that you won't cash out this Golden Egg. I do think that Golden Egg, ironically enough, this is one of the compositions that could use it because you need so many extra resources and items. But I just be very skeptical if he picked Golden Egg here. He actually picked Golden Egg, so I'm rewinding this and trying to watch this in regular speed to see how he plays his roll down. He actually sold his Olaf, and one thing that's kind of awkward is that he also has a component anvil on his bench, so he actually has fewer bench slots than usual to play for. But you notice that he's trying to go for Gwen as his duo. He did roll past another Olaf, but he hits a Gwen too, and so he's going to try to play around Gwen and Fiora temporarily. It's a Morgana as well. Needs to pop this item anvil and pick something. Hand of Justice is a generically good thing, or he can go for another sword item here, like Giant Slayer. I think is also a possibility. Fast forwarding again and see how he actually does in these fights, if he's able to actually win any of them. He's going up against Fiora too, and Kalista, he is contested. His opponent also has Radiant Deathblade, so he ends up losing by a lot. So this is sort of a risky line that we'll see if it pays off. Cutting back here to 4-3. Looks like he is item moving his jacks and going to start distributing his items. He doesn't have Fiora at all, so he's just going to play around Gwen and Akali as the warriors. This is like one other way that you play the flex, which is to try to combine certain aspects of different packages. Instead of just trying to say, like, I'm playing Fiora 1 and then itemizing Fiora 1, he's itemizing his Gwen 2 as his duo. It's important to note that he actually skipped the two-step process for Kalista. He went from Ashe 2 straight to Kalista. That's because he didn't actually find, like, any reliable item holder. And Kalista 1 actually can carry if your front line is good enough. So just keep that in mind. Looks like on Carousel, he's going to get this Kalista 2 very easily. He's going up against a pretty weak low roll board playing around Portal. This person took a Portal dummy with Wandering Trainer. Oh, and they have a Portal. I see. This person's trying to get to 9 and play 10 Portal. That's actually really scary because that means that he's going to be on a time clock, but because this player, if they get 10 Portal, will win the game. So yeah, it's actually a good time for him to actually play him because he needs every free win he can get from Golden Egg. He's going up against another Rise board and he just clears everything because now he has Kalista 2 and Gwen 2. He also did hit that Rakan too, but you know, for the most part, still just being very consistent. Whoa, he's feeding with Briar. Are you insane? Are you insane, man? Okay, I think what he's trying to do is maybe get strong enough to... Oh, wait. Actually, I see what he's trying to do. He's trying to actually get Briar strong enough so that he can win these extra crucial rounds and get his Golden Egg cash out. Completes Bloodthirster and feeds again. He's a madman. Also, I really like that he's still keeping 2 items on all of these carries, so that way the unstable treasure chest can complete the items onto Briar, Gwen, and Thanasis. All just really subtle, smart things that he's doing to try and maximize his odds and play around the portal in the best possible way. He's going up against the other Kalista player again with the Radiant Deathblade, ends up losing. He is 3 rounds away from cashing out, so if he loses 2 more times, he's still going to get the cash out, but he will be probably in like the 30s of HP. Now going against the Portal player again that hit the Wandering Trainer plus the Portal Crest, but this time they have Rise 2, and we're down a Combat Augment because we don't have... we have Golden Egg, and that's actually a bad sign. Now our HP lead is dwindling. Okay, but we're going up against a Veigar player that's only on Veigar 2, so we get the win. So now we cash out, which is huge. I'm going to go ahead and slow things down for the cash out. We're going to end up going for red buff because I don't think we have anti-heal. So this is actually a very important pickup. And here comes a Golden Egg cash out, and it is a Tactician's Crown with Radiant Thieves Gloves and a regular Thieves Gloves. Oh my god, I wish we had Lucky Gloves now. The Thieves Gloves is interesting because also the way it interacts with the treasure chest means that it'll be a guaranteed item onto the units that aren't holding the Thieves Gloves. So now his treasure chest has kind of a lot of different targets to potentially fill up here. We'll see. The nice thing about his Tactician's Crown is that he also gets another unit to slot in more synergy. If you look at his synergy bar, it's looking immaculate. He got 4 Preserver plus like a ton of different small things. So you can see how he was planning around his Stand United. And with this amount of HP, it looks like top 2 should be secured. Getting those free wins on stage 4 against some of the people ramping up is huge. Okay, we're now going up against the Deathblade Kalista player who was beating us every single time, but now we're stronger because we got the Golden Egg cash out. And we have top 3 secured. But yeah, now it's 10 Portal versus us versus the other Kalista player. And there's such a huge HP gap that we're probably going to actually keep ping-ponging back between the 10 portal and the other Kalista player. The way that I think we can get second is if we win versus the Kalista player twice and we get some fortunate matchmaking. Oh, wow. He's actually pushing to level 10 as well. He takes a charm that gives him target dummies. Dude, he has so many units on his board. Oh, my God. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. He has 14 units on his board. Absolute madness. But he's biting with Briar, and he could have spent his gold to roll for Briar. I guess he's thinking that he's going to eventually get to 10 and hit Briar 2, Morgana 2, and cap out high that way. Oh, my God. He almost beat the 10 portal player. Oh, my God. He was like one hit off. Oh, wow. That's actually so close. Now he's rolling, seeing if he can go for 2-star 5 cost. Hits the Briar 2. Okay, he hits Briar 2. That's big. That would have been the difference last fight. Okay, now going against the other Kalista player, trying to deal as much damage. This is a fight that determines a lot. Wait, oh my gosh. Wait, his ghost? His ghost beat the 10 portal player. Wow. Okay, so pushing to 10, getting all those 5 costs online and just having overwhelming numbers. There's just like too many units for the Rise and whatnot to kill. I can't believe it. He actually beat the 10 portal player with just his ghost. All right, it's always golden egg into fast 10. Biting with Briar one more time. Doesn't Thieves Gloves his Camille? In fact, he's trapping his Camille a little bit. He has the 4 dummies from the Major Wish, but it looks like he's way too strong. And this is a first place, beating 10 portal, beating another Kalista player, and playing Spoils of War 3. I want to show another spot from 60-second where he decided to play Loose Streak. He has What Doesn't Kill You, which gives you gold and items every 4 losses. And you can notice that he's at very low HP. He's been losing a lot. He doesn't have a perfect loss streak either. So I want to see his level 8 roll down at 4-1 now that he's in a must-hit situation where he's under a lot of pressure, and see how he handles it. So let's pay close attention to what he's holding. He's at 36 HP. He doesn't have much time to hit and stabilize before he might get under pressure. So let's analyze this and take it slow. So he hits a bunch of Pyros, also hits a Briar. He's not going to play around Varus 1. He'd rather play around Kalista 1 than Varus 1, which makes sense. He also does not have Rage Blade yet, although does he get it here? He does not. So a lot of things suboptimally lining up. And this actually should help make you feel better. He's already a little bit on the dizzy side because he isn't even fully rolling down his gold. In fact, one piece of advice might be to roll a little bit more on 3-7 before 4-1, because look at how much he hasn't rolled yet. But the other aspect of it is that he could be waiting for his augment to help him make a more informed choice. But the downside is now he's at 23 life. He is offered Arcana Crown, Radiant Relics, and New Recruit. I think New Recruit is probably the safest take here. Picks Roll the Dice, gets 6 gold. That's just really huge. And now let's see his roll down. Hits a Xerath 2. So I said we weren't going to play around Arcana, but now I guess he will. And yeah, when in Rome. So how does he actually play around this then? He has the Mordekaiser with the Vanguard, but he's thinking about teching in the Nasus because Nasus is just a better tank. And he also has his Duplicator. Okay, stopping here for now and going up against a low roll multi-striker player. This person's still stuck on Kassadin 2. And remember, one thing that's important to note is that it's still 4-2. Like, yeah, you feel pressure to hit because you have 23 life, but you should still be playing against boards that aren't like crazy powerful yet because it's still early in stage 4. Goes back on the roll down and hits a Kalista 2. And now also has Tahm Kench 2. So now we are playing on this Arcana core. Despite this, I still think that taking Arcana +1 would have been a mistake. So I like this New Recruit because it lets him stretch out and have this Duplicator to help hit his board. And because of the quality of his board at stage 4, he already has 2-star Kalista and 2-star Fiora already early. So this is good stuff. Hits a Rod, and now he has Rage Blade. He win streaks the rest of the stage, and now he's going to start going to 9. He's going to go to 9, replace some of these units, and probably going to make a huge comeback in this game. He win streaks all the way to stage 6, and he's been slowly but surely racking up items for his Xerath 2 that he hit. And now he's going to go for red buff, probably because that was just the best item that he had available to him, and roll down on a 9 while maintaining this board. And the reason why I think this is so cool is because he's not playing around the Briar and Camille 2. He's playing around an Arcana version. He's also charming Tahm Kench, which is unusual because a lot of people charm the Xerath for true damage, and getting that HP with all these synergies is really good. Think of it as like Stand United or Jazz with the HP. We're going to fast forward here and have a heads-up situation where it looks like he's now down for a 1v1, going up against a very capped Veigar board. In fact, both these players are streaking. I actually don't know if we beat this Veigar board because it has Slurring the Spell and it has Zonias, which can be really difficult for us to snipe because we don't have a way to proc it early. Looks like we actually lose. And going up against this other Veigar, looks like we didn't have the Xerath proc the early Zhonya's. Now it does. Yeah, Zhonya's Veigar is really hard to beat. But that's okay. Second's really good. And if his opponent didn't have like the nuts, he probably would have won this game too. I can't believe 60 Second beat 10 Portal. He did it with Golden Egg, and he did it with Biting Briar, playing all kinds of very stylish, flashy ways. You can see why he's one of the most successful, but also one of the most popularly studied players. Hope you guys learned a thing or two from this Kalista guide. Let me know if you have any tips in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time.